Hi everyone, this is Heidi Hanna, and I am so excited to share with you the insights from our eBrain study. I want to thank you for participating in the study, and if for some reason you're getting access to this video and you haven't taken the brain assessment, I want to let you know that you do have a chance to do that. So I'll be back at the end of the recording to tell you a little bit more about that. So what I wanted to start with is a discussion I had with Evian Gordon, who was the developer of the brain assessment that we used, as well as a pioneer in the field of integrative neuroscience. I sat down with him just a few minutes ago, actually, at Coronado, and had a discussion about the findings that we had. And he also offered some suggestions for how to apply these findings in a way that's really strategic for your daily routine. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I'm here with Dr. Evian Gordon, and what I want to talk about now is this fabulous study that we are getting ready to wrapping up. And what I wanted to do was send out a video to all of my friends at EO who have helped us get this far. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the results and what it may mean with regard to looking at a peak performance model and looking at what I've coined the eBrain, the inside the mind of an entrepreneur. So this is the first time we're really talking in depth about this, but in a short way, I want to give people some insight and some takeaways as to what they can do with this. So what I've done is I've kind of printed out in a simple way, and I'll share this with everybody who's watching this, the key findings that we saw. So basically what we're looking at, and I'll hand this to you, is comparing this group. We've got about 280 studies that have been completed, and I've been hand tracking them on an Excel spreadsheet. I've been watching these different changes, and we've got Evian's team looking at the data and running analytics behind the scenes as well. But basically what showed up to me is that this particular population has significantly higher levels of perceived stress. And so it didn't surprise me to see that. There's also a shorter attention span, and that didn't surprise me either. But what I wanted to see within that is, are there brain patterns or specific capacities that allow successful entrepreneurs to stay at the pinnacle of their profession? And then what is it about those people who maybe are struggling or burning out more quickly? And there's going to be some follow-up to this, obviously, to get at all the details. But the things that showed up, and we talked briefly about this, some of them were surprising to me. We saw a higher than normal level of motor coordination, for example, and it was fun to kind of process what that might mean. We saw that there was a greater recall memory. We also saw that there was higher perceived resilience, better positivity bias, which I find to be very important. And what was the last one? Was flexibility, cognitive flexibility, which makes a lot of sense as we process that. So rather than me tell people what I think, what I wanted to do was give you a chance to just quickly kind of think through, and you and I talked about, let's start with motor coordination, for example. I thought that was a throwaway item, but the more I looked at it, it seems that that may be an indicator of the speed of making decisions, potentially.
So I'm an integrationist, so I'd like to try and answer it in an integrative fashion along the lines of the brain 1 to 4. So the thing firstly was a great privilege for me to speak to the global leadership of EO, because it gave me a sense of just how smart, and I don't mean smart in a trivial sense. When I think of smart, it's integrated brain. So how integrated brain smart they were. And so seeing this data is fascinating to me. So here's my understanding of what are the hallmarks of why this is different to other data we see. Firstly, let's get back to the simplest principles. Fear, are they fearful, or are they open to getting reward? Number one. So what is their bias? Are they threat focused, or are they explorative focused? And clearly the fact that they have some stress is not necessarily a bad thing. The power of resilience is that if you have stress, as long as you overcome that adversity and you know also how to recover from that stress, it's like a muscle, you build up resilience like you build up anything else. So firstly, it seemed to me like that their stress may be subserving something that's reasonably positive, pushing them to new boundaries, but they also have this ability to learn from it.
Like an athlete, right? The athletes that we work with, we see the same thing. We push harder.
And there's no difference with physical weight stuff, pushing yourself to the max and then recovering. So it literally is that example. The second thing is there's a composite of things here in terms of what I saw. I like to think of the other thing that everybody can relate to in the body, which is there are two systems. Your fight-flight stress, which we know can be damaging if it's chronic, very damaging. It affects everything, including all your decision making. But then there's the vagus state, cranial nerve 10, your parasympathetic state, whereby you have an optimal cognitive flexibility. and a body flexibility to adapt to your work. So this is where heart rate variability is increased, and the point is that they have a cognitive flexibility that is such a good sign, because it means potentially that you're taking situations, maybe pushing yourself a little as a peak performer to take on a little more stress to get to the highest level, that you may be able to still remain not in a fight-flight mode, but in a cognitive flexibility. And that is really powerful. And being open to possibilities, capitalizing on chance. This is what distinguishes peak performers.
So I want to add a
from
piece to
others.
that. Because I've worked so much with EO, as I started seeing these results come in, I remember having a conversation with somebody about this exact thing. And I said, you know, with making decisions quicker, for example. And I remember someone and a whole group of people saying, we don't wait to make the right decision. We make the decision and then we make it right.
I was blown away by that.
And that hit me because I realized it really is about being resilient enough and confident enough to get into motion, to know that while you're in motion, you can still make adjustments.
And you adapt, and that's the key. That most people, the first sign of gunfire, the first problem, and they catastrophize and it's over. Whereas the ability to actually adapt can only happen at the top of the tree. So to me, this pattern, the speed, the adaptability, the flexibility, the openness, the positivity, never say die. That's the key thing we see in all the peak performers we study around the world in various guises, not just corporate but sport. They never give up. You put that together, that's a pretty powerful brain cocktail. But last but not least, as you know, we spoke about it when we presented to the global leadership. It still is the key thing is to stand back and still see how well do they bring together their results in terms of the ability to master stress, the ability to know how to appropriately go for reward, the right, not overreach, the small step kind of reward, capitalize on chance, accept that defeat is part of the learning experience, and then in their how to really be in the moment in their non-conscious mode and trust that with their conscious rational thinking, and last but not least, reconcile their emotional abilities, their feeling in terms of being aware of their feelings, their thinking of strategic thinking, planning, their ability for recall, which is higher, focus, and then last but not least, how to self-regulate this all. So last but not least at all is here we've looked at individual components that seem to make sense for subserving peak performance, but ultimately it's about making a more effective, adaptive, holistic brain-body system. And that's where I think hopefully we're moving to, for them to see that, and each individual then titrating what works for them, because it's those idiosyncrasies that are not captured by average data, and everybody will find their own sense of elements that work best for them, that may there's multiple paths to peak perform, and that's the final, and they're capable of it because they just are better integrated brains.
And brain-body integration. I love that. Brain-body integration is pulling all of this together, right? Because my concern, and I think where I'd like to go next with this, is believing that you're resilient is great, and having the confidence is great, but we're still seeing people burn out. So as a community, how can we support people to have that self-regulation? So looking at this, knowing that you trained with the leadership, you spoke with me at Leadership Academy last year. One, if people were watching and saying, okay, what's the one thing that I can do? I mean, obviously we want them to assess if they can. And if they haven't assessed yet, assess and let us give you some customized feedback. But beyond that, what's the number one thing that people could do to build that adaptable effectiveness?
It's a great question. The number one thing, if they really want to be brain-based, is to really actually study that report and look at themselves. These are strategic thinking people. They were the most successful bunch of people I've ever spoken to, and I've spoken to a lot of people. So here we have strategic thinkers, highly successful, not without their challenges. I mean, some of the stories that they shared openly, which is another thing, people are prepared to share their mistakes, and some of their mistakes were pretty formidable. They overcame them. But it's to take, in answer to your question, my personal view, to take that assessment, really immersively look at it in the harsh light of day, in terms of their own lives, and open the door to why did they turn out this way? What is the impact of not having bonded with your mother, of having an alcoholic father, of early life trauma, or the opposite. I happen to have come from a family that was the opposite. I was overly fated, and it diminished my initial resilience because I was over-validated. I said, oh, this is like a cool ride. And actually the damage came later because until I sort of, so that whole spectrum, peak performance need challenges, and my challenges came later when I started to try and tackle the brain, from giving up the golden highways of cardiology for the dirt roads of the brain. So that's where my traumas came from, and people just trusting the wrong people, and the lessons that brings. So everybody gets there in a different way, but to really open the floodgates and then choose one new habit a month, 30-day challenges, to genuinely try it and see for yourself the extent to which you can set the footprint of a new neural network that subserves a new habit in 30 days, and then you take it into your real life, becomes a habit for life. So brick by brick, new brain habit by new brain habit, you can rebuild further and further elements of peak performance that subserve your specific needs. And those are the two things that I think they then become their own brain coach. Not that they don't need you, they always need you. But that's to me the real journey, and
that's
the irony.
self-regulation.
And the weird thing, Heidi, is it's like so doable as long as they keep it simple and they don't become neuroscience junkies, which is just like dilettantes. Collect information, read lots of articles. It's about integration, which is where we started and which is where I'd like to end off, because integration is just such a beautiful word, and it's so hard to do because it ultimately comes to the greatest simplicity, because you extract out what really works for you and you don't get seduced by all the other stuff that works for everybody else and go, yeah, I want that. No, and what works for you, and you can only know that. You can't manage yourself if you don't measure yourself, and you can't get to the peak unless you have a kind of like, it's almost like a philosophical and depth of discipline of what you're up against. You know, a couple of million years of evolution and an incredibly unique system that is miraculous but massively flawed, and that is a very challenging set of parameters to absorb and master.
Okay, so I'm going to add two last things before we finish this, and that is a couple of areas, my insights, having worked with EO for so long. The first one is one of the scores that didn't show up as being hugely significant statistically, but I think is significant to think about, is social capacity. So we know that feeling isolated or feeling disconnected is really hazardous to the brain. And it fascinated me to see that social capacity was actually quite low in this group, because I see this as a social group, but it turns out that EO members are social with each other, but not necessarily outside of this particular group. So I want to, maybe as a conversation later, we discuss the impact of social capacity. And the other one is sustained attention. So I jokingly said, and I've had many conversations with all of you to say, you know, most of us have ADD, ADHD. What it turns out is that having the ability to wear multiple hats could actually be good for entrepreneurs. So it might not be that you need sustained attention in the workplace, but I tell you, when you go home and you're with your family, they want your attention. And I know that that's a challenge for a lot of us who train ourselves to be a million different places during the day. So things to consider, and maybe talking points as we continue to have our conscious conversations together.
So they're just such wonderful points. The one thing about social capacity is I've done a few surveys about peak performance and social capacity, including in business. And it is fascinating to me how few people it takes to be very successful, especially commercially. And it's often easy to underestimate that. So for example, I've done surveys in stockbroking and said, how much of your business is generated by how many people? And often I'm shocked to hear that it's a tiny number of people.
10% of people provide, I think 90%.
So there's that sort of, so it may be a different kind of social capacity. It may be one that's a band of brothers or sisters that are really understand that winning is a very special dynamic and needs a sort of true deathbed kind of trust. Yeah. And they shape that.
It's
so it
not
may
breath,
be a different.
it's depth.
Well, yeah, and I've heard you say, for those of you who think that your litany of names on your Facebook is a great thing to do, think again, because you may just be, you know,
and it's the perception of connection. It's not how many people you have. It's, do you feel connected. And if you do with a limited number of people, that's totally fine. I just challenge people to recognize, I guess, that connection is a critical brain component.
It is, but
Well,
so
however
is
you
depth.
define it.
So is authenticity and so is depth. So the analogy I use is snorkelers and deep divers.
Right.
So the snorkelers are just like feeling the sense of superficial connectedness, and it can be great. I mean, it's nothing. Our brains love belonging. You only have to look at religion and any club. But it's the depth that creates is the real sort of authentic growth connection.
Right.
That's from what I see with people who study social behavior. So it's a very, very interesting question. That quality may literally be quantity by orders of magnitude.
Great. Thanks, Evan. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed having that conversation. So I just wanted to give you a couple of follow-up items. The first one is, if for some reason you haven't yet taken the brain assessment, we do have it available now, and there are 2 different ways that you can take the assessment. Number 1 is you can go to my website, HeidiHanna.com, and go to the tab that says eBrain. That's actually going to take you directly to the eBrain assessment. And this is really a self-directed route of doing it. We decreased the price by about 60% to get a low rate of $99 for the assessment, and that also comes with 30 days of free online training. Now, if you want more detailed feedback, I'm going to do for a limited time some personalized reports. And what that means is that you will actually sign up for a course, and that course is available at eBrain.HeidiHanna.com. The course is called the eBrain Elite Assessment, and the price right now is $500 for the assessment, but I've put together an EO code special for you to get that reduced to $350. So I will provide the code in the email, just so I don't forget what it is as I'm talking here. And basically what that entails is you will be invited into my community, so I will actually oversee the assessment process. You will still do the same assessment. It's 30 minutes online at the convenience of your own home. And instead of just getting the generic report feedback, I'm actually going to go through and utilize that with a couple of other assessments that I'm going to email you. One is the Synergy energy assessment, and the other one is a stress assessment. And by comparing all 3 of these, I'm going to be able to give you really customized feedback as to what I would suggest that you target first as you're looking at improving your brain health and fitness. So it's just a little bit more of a personalized coaching experience for you rather than just taking the assessment. But definitely both are helpful. There are other options available to you as well on that eBrain.HeidiHanna.com website. That's going to take you to the curriculum that I've been developing. So far, there's a fundamentals course, there's the eBrain training brain assessment package, the elite package I just mentioned. And then we're also going to be adding some 21-day challenges on stress management, peak performance, weight management, sleep, how to improve your sleep patterns. There's going to be a lot of things coming up there. So just keep me posted if there's anything I can do to help support your brain health and fitness. I sure would love the opportunity to do that. So thank you again for participating. Please send me an email if there's anything I can do to help you in your journey. Heidi at HeidiHanna.com. Thanks.